Hello and welcome to the history of Babylon 5. Today's episode, Earth Force 1, and here we go. Earth Force 1 was a spacecraft used to transport the Earth Alliance President to other planets. Earth Alliance President Luis Santiago, a strong proponent of interstellar diplomacy and supporter of the Babylon 5 project, chooses to visit the Babylon 5 station in 2258. He travels to the station on board Earth Force 1, accompanied by an escort of Starfury fighters bearing the presidential logo. During the visit, he delivers a public address on the station and presents a wing of Starfuries to complete the station's fighter complement. The wing is designated Zeta Wing. Shortly after midnight, on January 1st, 2259, Earth Force 1 explodes, killing President Santiago. The transport was in the vicinity of the transfer point at Io at the time of the destruction. Prior to his assassination, President Santiago had been due to deliver his New Year's address. Santiago's vice president, William Morgan Clark, assumed the presidency after being sworn in aboard Earth Force 2, the official transport of the Earth Alliance vice president. Suspiciously, Vice President Clark had disembarked Earth Force 1 shortly before the explosion, complaining of a viral infection. Clark was later implicated in the assassination plot, and his dictatorial regime was overthrown by a rebellion led by Captain John Sheridan 3 years later. The EAS Alexander was an Earth Alliance Omega-class destroyer, which was under the command of General William Hague at the start of the Earth Alliance Civil War. When President Morgan Clark ordered martial law across the Earth Alliance, Hague attempted a coup. When that failed, forces loyal to Hague joined up with him and headed to the jump gate at Io. Vessels loyal to Clark opened fire on Hague's ships, but the Alexander and other ships were able to jump out of the Sol system. The other ships were soon destroyed by Clark's forces. Hague was killed returning from a meeting with authorities on Orion 7 when the Alexander came under attack by the EAS Clarkstown. Major Ed Ryan took command, reluctantly destroying the Clarkstown in order to get away. The ship proceeded immediately to Babylon 5, a place where Hague believed that they would be safe. Once at Babylon 5, he asked for sanctuary, which John Sheridan provided. The EAS Churchill arrived at the station as well. The captain of that vessel, Sandra Hiroshi, informed both Sheridan and Ryan that Clark had ordered the bombing of Mars for refusal to implement martial law. She warned them that Clark was sending ships to seize Babylon 5 and the Alexander. Major Ryan offered to take his ship and draw their fire, but Sheridan convinced him to stand with him as one. Forces loyal to Clark arrived at the station, and a battle soon ensued. The Alexander was heavily damaged, but the Churchill and the Clark-loyal vessels were destroyed. After the battle, Major Ryan decided to leave Babylon 5 space, to draw away at least some of Clark's forces, and to search for other rogue ships that had defected to their side. After the liberation of Proxima 3 in 2261, the Alexander returned to Earth Alliance space and was one of the rebel destroyers that volunteered to remain to protect the population from counterattacks. The EAS Cortez was an Earth Force Explorer-class ship. She was assigned to deep space mapping around the year 2254. Under the command of Captain Jack Maynard, she spent 5 years exploring and mapping unknown space, in the last 2 in Sector 900 alone. In 2259, the Cortez was called in to repair one of the Euphrates sector's jump gates. Since Babylon 5 is located in that area, the ship's captain decided to travel to that station for its resupply and catch up with his old friend, John Sheridan. After resupplying, the Cortez jumped back into hyperspace, but a catastrophic malfunction sent the ship adrift. While they had the parts to repair their navigation, the time required would put them so far off the hyperspace beacon that they would be lost forever. Luckily, they were able to send a distress signal to Babylon 5, and a Starfury wing managed to bring the ship back to Babylon 5, making it the first time an Earth ship lost in hyperspace was recovered. Explorer-class ships are used by Earth Force to explore new regions of space, map star systems and planets, make and maintain diplomatic relations with other races, and build new jump gates. It has a crew of 350. The engines are a Beagle Bryant 9000A particle thrust engine. It is jump capable. It has gravity in rotational sections only. and sports 4 52mm plasma pulse cannons and 4 twin particle cannons. These ships are built by Mitchell Hyundai at the new Kobe Orbital Shipyard. Designed for the long haul, this is a purebred exploration vessel for charting out on the rim, making first contact with new species, and constructing new jump gates to open up exploration of areas with useful resources. Vessels of this class were not built for combat and were unlikely to be called upon for fleet action support. Explorers are the largest ships in service of the Earth Alliance, at over 6 kilometers in length. For comparison, Babylon 5's station is just over 8 kilometers, or 5 miles long. Like many contemporary Earth Force vessels, Explorers were designed with a large rotational section for simulated gravity and a forward-facing launch bay. In addition to their complement of fighters, Explorer-class ships have an array of smaller support vessels and shuttles for long-range exploration and planetary surveying. The bulk of this ship's length is taken up by equipment mounting spars, forward and aft, of the rotating habitation section, used to carry jump gate construction equipment and prefabricated parts. The Earth Alliance has very few of these vessels due to their large cost in credits and equipment. But the few they do have allow for rapid expansion of Earth's sphere of influence through jump gate construction and are a good source of income, as other races can be charged for the use of these new jump gates. Captain John Sheridan remarked that if an Earth Force officer was supremely lucky, he or she would see 2 Explorer-class ships in his or her lifetime. In order to justify their expense, they are always on the rim constructing gates. They are only seen in civilized space if they are undergoing major overhauls. And in fact, crews starting or finishing their tours are transported to or from the Explorer by other ships instead of the Explorer visiting a port of call to pick them up. The Hyperion class heavy cruiser. Like most Earth Alliance ships of the period, the Hyperion lacked the capability to generate artificial gravity, either through the use of rotating sections or the later, more advanced gravitic drive systems. Though rotating sections were within the Earth's Force technical capabilities of the time, they greatly reduced the ship's speed and effectiveness. As such, the crews had to operate in a completely zero-gravity environment, requiring the use of seat straps and handholds to work effectively. In later years, ships such as the Clarkston were upgraded with the newer weaponry such as the 52mm plasma pulse cannon used on the Omega-class destroyers. Presumably, as the Warlock-class destroyer was able to generate a gravity field, this feature was added to the Hyperions as they were still operating in 2281. Before the introduction of the Omega and Warlock-class destroyers, the Hyperion-class heavy cruisers served as Earth's frontline warships, often supported by the heavily armed Nova-class dreadnought. Hyperion's heavy cruisers made up a portion of the fleet that was assembled for the Battle of the Line. And though a great many were destroyed, the ones that survived continued to serve alongside their successors as the workhorses of the Earth Force fleet. Even though its design was far past its prime, it continued to be in service as late as 2281.
The Nali-class heavy fighter was the primary fighter of the Mimbari Federation. It was manufactured at the Valera on-high orbital shipyards over Mimbar. The Mimbari Nile fighter is one of the strongest fighters among the younger races. It sports an array of advanced systems, firepower, and maneuverability. Armament consists of at least 3 light neutron fusion cannons, similar to those found on a Charlene-class warcruiser, but much less powerful. Defenses include a Mimbari stealth system, making a weapons lock difficult for a lot of other races. Due to the fact that the ship is designed primarily for hit-and-run attacks, it carries only a limited air supply and has no jump capability of its own. It has higher speed and more armor than any other fighter among the younger races. It is outmatched in maneuverability only by the Earth Force Starfury. However, as a Nile's armor can absorb a large number of hits from human weapons, and the stealth systems make maintaining manual lock difficult during high-speed maneuvers, this was not a major deterrent. While in flight, the pilot operates the ship in a prone position, with their head tilted back 90 degrees to look out the front viewport. This proved problematic for non-Mimbari rangers, particularly humans, as their physiology could not maintain such a head position for extended periods. Human rangers were thus in general forced to use alternative craft. Although even after the founding of the Interstellar Alliance and the introduction of more races into the ranks of the Rangers, they continued to train recruits who were biologically compatible in the use of the Nile. Having proven to be a dependable design for over 1,000 years, the Nile had served in both the First and Second Shadow Wars, and the Earth-Mimbari War. This fighter also continues to serve the fleets of both the Federation and the Interstellar Alliance, with a small contingent of Niles normally stationed on board the Anila Shak's White Star fleet.
The Narn Frazee class heavy fighter was the predominant class of fighter spacecraft utilized by the Narn regime, and was manufactured by McCann Industries at the wings of Galan Orbital Facility, over Narn. Fighters of this class were in service as early as 2258, when the Narn regime launched a surprise attack on the Centauri agricultural colony on Ragish III. During the attack, fighters swept quickly through the minefield, eliminating it to make way for their larger, heavy cruisers. The same year, 2 heavily armed fighters of this class were dispatched by an order of Ambassador Shakar to assist Catherine Sakai on her survey mission to Sigma 957. During the mission, Sakai's vessel Sky Dancer was disabled by a large alien spacecraft, and due to severe energy loss, the craft was on a decaying orbit into the planetary atmosphere. The fighters arrived just in time to rescue the Sky Dancer and escort it back to Babylon 5. In late December 2258, attacking shadow vessels wiped out a Narn outpost in Quadrant 37, alongside with all support craft, consisting of Frazee-class fighters and 3 heavy cruisers. Ambassador Shakar was piloting one of these crafts during its scout mission beyond the Rim in early 2259. He had been ambushed by at least 3 shadow fighters somewhere near the then unknown shadow homeworld, and was forced to retreat to the local jump gate, only barely escaping through it, losing all fighters from his escort. Frazee fighters are capable of operating both in atmosphere and in space. The cockpits of these fighters are pressurized so that the pilot does not have to wear a pressure suit as with Earth Alliance fighters. The cockpit's ergonomics were specifically fine-tuned for a Narn pilot, making it uncomfortable, if not entirely unsuitable for other species such as Mimbaris or humans. The fighter's flight controls were mainly made up of touchscreen interfaces suitable for the large hands of a typical Narn. Frazee-class heavy fighters had a length of 17.53 meters, 1 pilot, a Versal fusion engine, and 1 twin particle array. The Shadow Fighter was a standard fighter used by the Shadows. Shadow Fighters are extremely tough, fast, and powerful. It appears to feature the same resilient, blast-fracturing material as the larger Shadow vessels. The squat, spiky body of the Shadow Fighter is built around a central pulse cannon, which, when fired, causes the entire craft to convulse, appearing to spit as it discharges a weapon. More than capable of holding its own against most fighters used by the younger races, the only non-First One fighters seen to outmatch the Shadow Fighter was the early White Star prototype. This fighter is 15.3 meters in length. Its crew is unknown, possibly an organic being used as the CPU. It has gravimetric engines and phase-jumping engines, and its weapons include a Shadow Pulse bolt cannon and a biogenetic plague delivery system, which is optional. The defenses include a bioorganic armored hull. The Charlene-class warcruiser was in its time the largest and most powerful ship in the Mimbari fleet. They were manufactured at the Valera on high orbital shipyards orbiting Mimbar. This warcruiser had a length of 1,600 meters, had a crew of 4 command staff, 600 crew, and 150 ground troops. She had both Stralashta gravimetric engines and a Class A jump engine. It was powered by fusion reactors and had 12 fusion lasers, 6 neutron cannons, and an electromagnetic pulse cannon. Defenses included destabilizer and tractor beams, and a Mimbari stealth system. The main capital ship of the Mimbari fleet, the Charlene's stealth systems gave it an advantage over scanning and tracking systems.
that, when activated, it would prevent some of the races from achieving a positive weapons lock. The Charlin is also equipped with advanced scanners so powerful that when set to maximum have been known to interfere with the electronics on board less advanced ships, effectively jamming their systems. The Mark II SA-23E Mitchell Hundine Starfury is the Earth Force Standard non-atmospheric deep space interdiction and recon fighter. It first entered service in the 2240s. By 2260s, Earth Force began to supplement this model with the atmospheric-capable Mark III Thunderbolt, though the Mark IIs would remain in active service for at least the next 4 decades. A Starfury carries a standard armament of 4 forward-facing Copeland JC-466A pulse discharge cannons and 2 Copeland JC-44 pulse discharge cannons, with an additional 8 external hard points on the engine pylons to allow additional payloads, such as missiles or slug tanks. It was powered by a fusion reactor system and had thrusters on both forward and rear, along with stabilizers. A retractable grappling claw is housed in the vertical ventral hull for towing, with a corresponding hitch point located on the ventral aft tail. The Mark II Starfuries are highly maneuverable, unmatched among the younger races, with the ability to spin 180 degrees in under a second. They are also the only fighter craft capable of flying backwards at nearly the same speed as they can forward. Because of its maneuverability, the cockpit is located in the center of the craft, thereby minimizing any stress and disorientation for the pilot from high G-turns. Combined with the heavy weapon load, the Starfury is one of the most impressive of the young races to outmatch most comparable alien fighters. The Mimbari Nell class is a notable exception. While outclassed in raw maneuverability, the Mimbari fighter is superior in all other areas, a fact driven painfully home during the Earth-Mimbari War. Ingress for the pilot is through a dorsal pressure hatch, usually accessible via a gantry while the Fury is locked into its launch cradle. Once inside, the pilot is strapped in upright, bent leg position, and as a rule wears a full pressure suit to safeguard against cockpit breaches. The entire cockpit also acts as an escape pod that can be ejected during combat, potentially saving a stricken pilot from the craft's destruction and enabling them to be retrieved later by a rescue and recovery craft. A variation of the Starfury is the Heavy Starfury. The Heavy Starfury was a rare heavy fighter variant used by Earth Force in 2258. In terms of design, the Heavy Starfury is visibly very similar to the far more common SA-23E Mitchell Hundine Starfury. The Heavy Starfury is distinguished by a heavy twin-barreled pulse cannon and a second aft-facing cockpit, with a corresponding pair of rear pulse cannons. One such fighter was held aboard the EAS Hyperion and was used to shuttle Captain Ellis Pierce over to Babylon 5. Shortly afterwards, it participated in the battle to defend Babylon 5 from a group of outcasts belonging to Varn's race, who were attempting to lay claim to the great machine of Epsilon 3. The Icarus was an exploratory spacecraft owned by Interplanetary Expeditions. It was captured by the Shadows during a survey mission to Zahadum. In December 2256, the Icarus departed Station Prime on a 2-week archaeological and scientific mission to a planet out on the rim, codenamed Alpha Omega 3. Unusually well-funded. The expedition had a budget 4 times greater than similar missions, and the ship carried aboard some of the most advanced equipment available at the time. The Icarus made its way via jump gate to as close to the rim as the beacon system would allow, before rendezvousing with the Explorer-class ship EAS DeSoto, which took the Icarus as close to Alpha Omega 3 as was convenient. The crew traveled the last 20-day stretch in normal space before landing on the planet's surface. The ship's arrival resulted in the Shadows being prematurely awakened from their centuries-long hibernation. Not ready to be exposed to the younger races so soon, the Shadows captured the ship's company and crew, using an artifact dubbed the Egg, and gave them a choice: either serve the Shadows willingly, or become a new central processing unit for their ships. Except for Dr. Chang and Dr. Crusolin, who were killed, all except Morden refused. and it is implied that they were all used as processing units. The Icarus was made to take off empty, send a distress call, and blow in space. The ship was presumed destroyed with all hands by IPX and the Earth Alliance. In 2259, while under the influences of an energy being, Captain John Sheridan witnessed the destruction of the Icarus. The Mimbari Flyer is a small shuttle of an unknown class, used by the Mimbari to transport passengers and cargo, and is capable of both atmospheric and spaceflight. The Zahelin was Delen's personal flyer, kept in a docking bay on Babylon 5 since 2257. In 2258, Delen took the ship to a rendezvous with the Valen Tha when the leadership of the Grey Council was offered to her, but she turned it down. The Zalen later went to Mimbar aboard the Valen Tha. 1 year later, it went to meet with the Valen Tha in regarding the removal of Delen from the Grey Council. The Zalen went to the Streb homeworld to rescue Captain John Sheridan, who was captured by the Streb vessel. In 2260, the Zalen brought Delen and Lanier to the White Star. Later, the Zalen went to meet with the Grey Council on the Valen Tha again, about the crisis in the Earth Alliance. The Lumeni transported Fleet Captain Lanan to Babylon 5 from his flagship, which was on station near Babylon 5. Mimbari Flyer 969 was the call sign given to the flyer to Jadur by the Mimbari Wind Swords clan. In 2258, Jadur piloted the ship to Babylon 5 with the intent to sell her universal anti-Gothic serum to the Earth Alliance. Shortly afterwards, Jadur's flyer left the station for Earth Alliance space but was destroyed before entering the jump gate when a Borlon cruiser exited the gate and fired on Jadur's vessel. The unnamed flyer, courier vessel assigned to Babylon 5. In 2259, Lanier arranged to borrow the courier's flyer in order to accompany Delen to her meeting with the Grey Council.
The USS Copernicus is a sleeper ship used by humans for deep space travel before jump gates were provided by the Centauri. In 2161, chartered by a private corporation to look for alien life, the Copernicus carried cryogenic freezer technology to preserve its crew, Mariah and her husband William, for the long ship's journey. Just after the Earth-Mimbari War, the Copernicus drifted near a lifeless moon where a soldier of darkness boarded the vessel and reprogrammed the Copernicus flight path to take it to Zahadum, intending to use the two crew members as sustenance for the duration. In 2259, the Copernicus drifted into the Epsilon system and came within range of Babylon 5. The Copernicus homed in on the station's signals and transmitted its automated greeting, and was brought aboard the station, carrying with it the still-living Mariah and the Soldier of Darkness.
The Valerius was a Primus-class battlecruiser in the Centauri Republic. It supported an impressive arsenal of weapons. In 2259, during the Narn Centauri War, the Valerius was one of the Centauri warships to be retrofitted with a highly illegal mass driver system. The Valerius was the lead ship in the fleet of the Centauri warships that took part in the final assault on the Narn homeworld, plucking asteroids out of nearby orbit and bombarding the planet from space for days on end until the Narn's regime's unconditional surrender. To personally oversee their victory, Lord Rifa specially reserved a place on board for himself and Londo Malari. Londo watched the terrific damage through one of the viewports. The Valerius had a crew of 212. She was jump capable, also had gravity, and the weapons included 4 heavy X-ray laser cannons, 2 twin particle cannons, and 1 mass driver retrofit. Thank you for watching the History of Babylon 5. Have a great day. Bye-bye.